Welcome out everybody, Cory here with Golden Press Studio. You know, I've gotten a lot of questions that they say, Cory, can I print my transparencies and my screen printing films from Procreate? Do I have to go to Adobe Illustrator? And normally I tell them, yes, you need to go to Adobe Illustrator. You cannot print out of Procreate. But today, my answer is kinda yeah. Maybe we can print out of Procreate. I was doing some research on my own personal time and I figured out a really cool method. So in this video, what we're gonna be going over is some design tips when it comes to designing in Procreate, thinking about screen printing, as well as how to print out your transparency films in Procreate, essentially. So I'm super excited, really stoked, and yeah, might as well just hop into this. The first thing I want to jump into is tips for designing. The first thing we want to think about when it comes to designing for screen printing in Procreate is our canvas size. Right up here, we're gonna hit this little plus sign and we're gonna actually create a new canvas just by hitting this little buddy right there. And this is our little canvas realm. We can give it a name if we want. We can say screen. That's probably fine. And for our width, we're doing 13, and our height, we're doing 19, and we're switching it from pixels to inches because that is the size of transparency film that we use when we print off our artwork to get it ready for screen printing, to get ready to burn our screens. Our DPI is set to 300. And it says that our maximum layers are 20. If you want an even higher resolution, you could push it up to 400, but then it pushes your maximum layers to 9. But I think 300 actually is good enough. And so we're just gonna hit create, and now we have our artboard, 13 by 19. Something that is just kind of helpful within this realm is something I created. And we'll have download links to all this. They'll just be like little free downloads on our website. If we go to the little wrench icon and hit add and insert a photo, I actually created 13 by 19 rulers that just pop up in Procreate, and I can zoom in and you can kind of see these rulers. And I threw in the half-inch mark as well. We're gonna utilize that to size our artwork for when we're getting ready to print it. The next tip I wanna give you for designing for screen printing is design to scale. So when I design in Procreate, a lot of times I just sketch my design with a red pencil. And as you can see here, I've just sketched out this skull and this snake and these flowers. And it doesn't really matter too much the size at this moment, especially when it comes to our sketch. I will say when we begin to do the finalized version of our design, kind of using a different brush and kind of inking our design, I recommend designing it to scale. So if you have this design right here and you plan on printing it at maybe 11 inches wide, maybe it's going like across the chest of a shirt or maybe on the back shoulders, then scale it up to that size, just your sketch. So when you start to go and ink your design, you're not gonna be like stretching it and losing any quality and changing its scale. You can get away with a little bit of like shrinking down your finalized design, but yeah, just a helpful tip is design to scale. Another tip for designing for screen printing in Procreate is utilizing a crisp and solid brush. So Procreate has tons of different brush options in it. I actually have some brushes that are for sale that you can pick up that actually can work really good, and I have some free brushes available, and we'll have all that linked in the description. But I recommend using a brush similar to like this. It's like tapered black or tapered black wiggle. When it comes to inking my design, I'm gonna go over here, create a new layer, and I'm gonna switch to 100% black, or just all these are zeroed out. You know, we want it all the way black, because this is also a black element in my design, but when it comes to actually printing our transparency, we're gonna want everything completely blacked out. And so we're on a new layer and we can just start going in, and that's actually a pretty good width, and just going over our lines. I might even drop the opacity a little bit of that bottom layer just so we can see what we're doing. And you can see with this line that I'm using that it's very crisp and it's a solid line. For designing, when we're talking about screen printing, I don't recommend using something like this, like pencil brush. But you can see that it has some gray tones in it and kind of speckles and that type of thing. And it just has like this kind of feathered edge. You don't want that when you're designing for screen printing. You want the crispest and cleanest lines. Kind of what we're doing is emulating vectored graphics. And so we want to use just solid black brushes. Like I said, there's lots of different things in Procreate that you can use. Lots of different brushes, but I wouldn't recommend using like a brush like this either. That again, you can really see that it has all these different grays and different tones in it. You want it just crisp and clean. Right on. So I've outlined and kind of done a lot of the inking when it comes to this type of design. Just kind of drew it out fairly quick. When it comes to shading our design, in the same vein that I was talking about, we don't want to use like gradients. I've seen people in the past take things maybe like this pencil and they'll brush in stuff and just kind of taper it off, and try to create some shading doing that. But for designing for screen printing, that's not really going to work super well. This is not going to print out very good because we have all these grays and we don't have clear definition between our blacks and our whites. And so one of the ways I recommend going about shading, you can just do it with these type of lines, which is one way that I do a lot. These kind of like thick and thin lines, kind of pulling in like this. And that kind of, it starts to represent different types of shade and gradients of shadows and that sort of thing. But another method you can use, and I actually tested this, is utilizing this tattoo stipple pack, which is stipple shading. It's essentially lots of little dots. Something I always just like to do is do those on a separate layer. It just seems safer. Like if I don't like it, it's easier to take away. I got this little blob dot scatter, and I just can go in and color in this area and just let it taper off a little bit, throwing a couple smaller dots off in the distance. Same with this area. You can see that it's creating these shadows, but when we zoom in, these are all just solid individual dots. And that's what we want when it comes to designing for screen printing. When it comes to doing multicolor artwork, one thing you want to keep in mind is working on multiple layers. So you don't have to deal with separating stuff, just already separate your stuff into multiple layers. If you're dealing with stuff that has really high detail like this with all this stipple shading, it's also a good idea to keep those shadows and stuff on a separate layer. It's going to be a lot easier to color in your design without that. So doing these flowers, the outline of them are going to be black, just like the skull and the snake. And so I'm just back on my original drawing layer and just going to do that real quick. What I'm going to do when it comes to coloring these, so I'm going to use this kind of feature within Procreate. It's a pretty cool feature, and it's called reference. And so if I go to this layer right here and I tap that, it brings up this little bar, and I'm going to click reference. And now it says reference on underneath the layer, or like the layered title. And I'm going to hit the little plus sign to make a new layer. And I'm going to go over here and let's choose this color green. And I'm just going to drag and drop this green where these leaves are, because we want these leaves to be green. We're coloring our artwork. And let's do these leaves too. And check this out. When I turn off this reference layer, all that's left is a punched out version of this leaf. So anywhere the black was, it's referencing and filling in just as the little green leaves. And we can do that again if we want another color. I'm clicking down on the black line drawing, clicking up again, the reference is still turned on. I'm going to choose like this kind of pink color, and we can just fill in our flowers with that. And as you can see, you know, we can turn off that and you can see, boom, we have our flowers punched out as well, and it's on a separate layer out of all those guys. And something that's also kind of cool is if you zoom in super close, you'll see it's got this really jagged pixely edge, which doesn't look great. But if actually we grab our reference and pull it above, it all of a sudden fills in that area and covers up, you know, that little pixely area. And when you're printing this, your black is gonna slightly overlap, and that's what you want. So it's actually already putting a bit of a trap upon your artwork, which is great. Also, if I wanted to fill in this skull, since all my texture is, you know, on a different layer, I can just go and drop this, and you see how it fills in behind all that texture. I don't have to go in and fill in all those tiny little spots. I can just slap that there, and it fills in all those little holes, which is really helpful. Now the little texture over top isn't punched out, but it probably isn't that big of a deal to print over top of that color. Just something to keep in mind though. All right, so we have designed this stuff and kind of put it all together. You know how to go about designing for screen printing, but now it's time to get our artwork ready to be printed. So the next thing we need to do is throw some registration marks on this. To do registration marks, I also included that. It'll be with the little download on our website. You just go insert photo, we have this little registration mark, and it just pops up right here. This is the kind of registration mark that we always use. This one's available to you. Now, if I want to make sure my artwork and my registration mark is perfectly centered on our artboard, what you can do is hit the little wrench up here, go to Canvas, go to Drawing Guide, hit that, and then Edit Drawing Guide, and you can just push this grid size to maximum, and it gives you a perfect center line. And we can zoom in super close, and we can just go and line up our registration mark just on that line, and you can just look, there's a little green line right here, and you just line that up with that line, and you know that it's perfectly centered. You can do the same down here. I just duplicated this registration mark, so when you're moving it around, you can just go, you hit that little snapping button, and then hit turn on magnetic, and then it will kind of keep that same position as that other one. And just to be sure, you can zoom in, check, and yep, that looks really good. And when it comes to multiple color stuff, we like to add a couple extra registration marks. So what you could do is just combine those two, duplicate it, and pull it over. And we already have our magnetic on, so that's good. And just do that again. And there we go. Now we have some registration marks on our artboard. One more thing is, as you notice, these guys are colored. And when it comes to printing out our artwork, we want all the colors to be completely black. I think we're good with that texture too, so I could combine these layers if I wanted to. We turn that off, and let's first work with this pink layer. So we have our flowers, and if you just touch this guy and select Alpha Lock, and then change your color to black, and then go and grab a large brush, just like a large solid brush. I have this one that's pretty good, and just like maxed out, and I'm just gonna color in just, you know, broadly, and the Alpha Lock is locking it in within just anywhere that's already drawn on your artboard. So now that guy is all black, and we'll do the same to our green flowers. We'll turn them on Alpha Lock and paint those in black. And now we have these three screens that we can print off, and we can, when it comes to printing, we'll also turn off our rulers. We don't need those anymore. And I know that this looks like a lot of detail, but it's actually possible to print this out of your printer if you have the right settings. So all that to be said, this design is essentially ready to go. If you follow these kind of tips and tricks, you should be able to print out artwork out of Procreate as well. Make sure you have really solid, crisp and clean lines. Make sure that you're shading so there's not any grays in it. We want to work with solid blacks when it comes to printing out good transparencies, and making sure your colors are on separate layers, throwing your registration marks on there. To print what we're gonna do is hit the little wrench, we're gonna go over to share, and we are going to save this as a PDF, and we're gonna choose best. And then you can either airdrop it to your computer, or you can save it to Google Drive and load it up on your computer. So I've not found a way yet to directly print this straight to a printer from the iPad. You still need to send it to your computer. I think the hang up with it is that our transparencies are 13 by 19 and that iPads are typically defaulting at 8.5 by 11 paper size. I've not found a way to change that. So if you found a way, do that. All you need is a computer. You don't need a subscription to Adobe Illustrator or anything like that. All you need is to send it to your computer and print it as a PDF from your computer. If your artwork is a multicolor print, right now we just printed the black layer. All you have to do is turn that layer off, turn on the next layer. This one's the green one. And you just go through that same process, save it as a PDF for best quality, and send it over to your computer. And you'll just repeat this process for each individual color that you're doing. So here we are on the computer, and this is that design. This is actually the final version of this design. I actually already screen printed this guy earlier when I was doing some tests to just see how well this would work. This is actually what I used in the design I used. So same design, you can see all that detail, and let's just open up this PDF. Yeah, we have the registration marks. This is straight from Procreate. I'm just gonna show you the process of printing off this artwork. To print it, we're gonna hit Command P, or you could go up to File and Print. And I'm gonna show you the optimal settings to get the best printed transparency. So the printer we're using, it's the Canon IX6800. This is a little preset that I've already set up, but I can just run you through the settings. First things first, we go to a paper size, and we're gonna set it to A3 plus 13 by 19, and then we're gonna hit the borderless. And then we're gonna go over to this preview button. We're gonna click that, and we're gonna go down to quality and media. The media type, you want to put that as photo, paper, platinum, and then you're going to pull your quality slider all the way to fine and set that to custom. Then we're going to go back over here. We're going to go down to color options, and we have an all black ink system, so you're just going to pull all your sliders all the way over to high. Just like all of these, we're at high at all of them. Your brightness we're gonna set to dark, and then you can just go and save settings as a preset, so you can use this all the time. If you don't have an all black ink system, back over here at quality and media, you can just select grayscale printing. It'll just print black ink, and you'll still get a really dark transparency. And then you can just hit print. And you're just gonna repeat this process for all those different colors. If you're working with multiple color artwork, it'll have all of its individual layers. And so here's my transparency that I printed, and man, I'm really impressed with this transparency. It has very, very fine detail. It's really crisp, and the blacks are very black, and it's gonna burn really well into our screens. I actually did a side-by-side comparison, and I took the same design and just image traced it in Adobe Illustrator just so we could have like a vectored version of this, and I actually ended up printing it a little bit bigger than what I printed it on here. But yeah, you can look at this and you can actually see, just a good comparison of these two. What it looks like printed out of Procreate, essentially, versus what it's like vectorizing it and having a vector object that we're printing. Really what I'm looking at with these is the quality of lines. Are they crisp? Are they black? Are they, pixelated versus, essentially vectored lines? And you can see that even in the Procreate print, man, these are solid looking lines that are very just black and nice and crispy. That's what we're looking for. I'd say that printing out of Procreate, depending on the artwork, is a totally viable option to get some transparencies going and get some screens ready to be burned. This is a screen I burned with the transparency printed from Procreate, a non-vector transparency that I printed. It burned really, really well. It turned out really good, and this is, I made some posters, and this is the design, screen printed onto a poster, printed from Procreate. And the detail in this design is amazing. It looks really, really good. It kind of started as an experiment for me, but I'm very impressed. I really didn't even think it was possible. You know, whenever people messaged me, I was just like, no, you need to do vector artwork, and I still recommend that. I'm still gonna be using Adobe Illustrator for almost all of my artwork, but if you don't have Adobe Illustrator, if you don't have Photoshop and things like that, man, printing out of Procreate is possible and will work. So there you go. I'm stoked. I hope you're stoked. Hopefully this answers some of your questions out there that have been wondering, can I do this? And the answer is, yeah, I think you can. I think you can print out of Procreate and get some nice looking transparencies to burn some screens. So hopefully this was informative to you. Hopefully you learned something from this video. And man, hopefully you can start making awesome art within Procreate and turning that art into reality and screen printing it. So man, thanks for watching this video. Thank you for checking us out yet again. And we will see you there. We'll see you in the air. And we'll arf on you later, little doggies. Arf!